All right, welcome to our Unit 3. Today we are talking absolute value and solving absolute value equations. And then the last half of the unit is solving inequalities. So we just finished up our unit on solving equations. And then in Unit 1, we talked a little bit about absolute value. So absolute value, hopefully you will remember, is the distance from 0. Okay, and distance is always positive. Okay, but as you recall, if we're looking at a number line, okay, if I have 0 here and I have positive 6 over here and I have negative 6 over here, those are the same distance from 0, but there are two possible answers that would give me that same absolute value. And the absolute value symbol, again, is those two vertical lines on the outside of our expression. Okay, so when you take the absolute value of a number, you always end up with a positive number or 0. And whether the input was positive or negative, the output, so your final answer, the last thing you do when you evaluate, you end up with a positive number. And that's important to remember. So absolute value equations always work this way. To be able to remove the absolute value bars, you have to isolate the absolute value part into one side of the equation. And then you can, I call it like the absolute value box, and then you can unpackage it. And you're going to take whatever's inside that absolute value bar and you're going to set it equal to that positive distance from 0. And then you're also going to take into that negative direction and set it equal to the negative. Okay, so very simple. What number is 7 away from 0? Well, 7. What number is also 7 away from 0? Negative 7. Okay, sometimes we can write those in a set. This is a set notation. Use the curly brackets. And you just list both of the numbers in the curly brackets. Or you can just list both of the numbers. Doesn't really matter. I'll put them in the set. I'm not sure how Alex will have you list them, to be honest. Okay, so here we have y, the positive distance is 3, and that negative direction distance would take us to negative 3. So again, if I put those in set notation, I end up with 3 and negative 3. Now this one's a little tricky. You're like, well, you already had the negative distance. But remember, when we take the absolute value, that final step, we always have to end up with a positive, right? So this is no solution because of that final step. Okay, so this is always positive when evaluated. Okay, so that's important to remember. So once we've isolated the absolute value, if it's ever equal to a negative, then we have no solution. Okay, so our general steps to solve an absolute value equation are to rewrite the absolute value equation as two separate equations, one positive, the other one negative. Solve each equation separately, and then you can check your answer, make sure both work, and then write your solution out. So here we go. So here our absolute value stuff is all alone. It's your nice little, it's like a little present. Once this is isolated and equal to a positive, when I say isolated, I mean like this part, all by itself, right? Nothing on, nothing added to, subtracted from, multiplied by, divided, outside of that absolute value. So if that's the case, then I unbox it. So x plus 2, and I set it equal to the positive distance from 0. I also unwrap it and I go the negative direction from 0, the same distance, okay? Then I solve both parts. So here x would equal 3 or x would equal negative 7. Now, in our examples up there, you're like, they were the same number. How come they're not the same number? Well, because we're adding or subtracting. So we can double check and make sure that they both work. So if I plug them back in, you can check to make sure that they work. So if I plug in 3, I'm going to change colors. If I take 3 and plug it in and do 3 plus 2, does that equal 5 when I take its absolute value? Well, that would be absolute value of 5 equals 5. So 5 does indeed equal 5. Okay. If I do the other one, absolute value, if I plug in -7 plus 2, does that still equal 5? Well, -7 plus 2 is -5. But what's the absolute value of -5? Positive 5. So positive 5 still equals positive 5. So that's where, make sure that your solutions are valid. You can do a quick mental check if you want to. Okay, so then our solutions in this case are going to be 3 and -7. The order that you write them in the set does not matter. You just have to have both of your answers listed. Okay, let's do another problem. I feel like changing colors here. So we're isolated, right? We're isolated, set equal to a positive number, so we're good to go. So we're going to unbox it. X plus 6 equals positive 4. Unbox it. X plus 6 equals -4. Solve both. So x equals -2 and x equals -10. -2 plus 6 is 4. That one works. -10 plus 6 is -4. That one works as well. So our solution is -2 or -10. If you can't do curly brackets, that's fine. Just do squiggly lines. All right, here we go. Again, isolated, positive number, we're good. So 6x equals 48. 6x equals -48. So here x is 8, or x is -8. Sometimes you'll see that written as like positive and -8. It's another way you could write that solution. Okay, let's keep going. Now, as we keep going, things are going to get a little bit more complicated. I'm probably going to go a little bit faster. If at any point you fall behind, again, you can always pause the video. I know I go fast. Here we go. We're isolated, so I can split it. X divided by 8 equals +4. X divided by 8 equals -4. Solve by multiplying both sides by 8. So x is +32, or x is -32. Oh, that's a bad bracket. All right, this time we have 2 operations inside. That doesn't really change our whole process. It just takes us another second or so. And we end up with fractions and decimals as answers, and that is totally fine. So what is that, 56? Now, because we're dividing by a 10, a decimal would be okay. So -5.6 is reasonable. Normally, fractions are superior. But sometimes a decimal is okay. It makes sense. So here a is 7. So, whoops. -5.6 and 7. Let's see, those are both divisible by 2, so that would be, what, 11/4? Okay, so don't let fractions scare you. Okay. Hopefully you're getting the hang of this. It's making sense. Okay, so this one again, double check. Are we isolated? Yes. Are we equal to a positive? No, we are not. So right now, we are not equal to a negative. This is no solution. You do not have to go any further. That's it. So always love when that happens because, you know, saves a little bit of work. Okay, maybe let's do 2 more. Are there any super complicated ones? You can always, you know, finish these on your own if you want. But I think I'm just going to do 2 more of these. And this one meets our criteria. Now, it is possible to get a single answer if your absolute value stuff equals 0. So there are 3 possibilities where you can get no solution, where you get 1 number, or where you get 2 numbers. Okay, so if we just do a quick glance, number 10, we're going to have 2 solutions. Number 11, this is a no solution again. And number 12, we would also have 2. So hopefully that helps. If you need any extra help, go ahead and ask questions in class or sign up for PRAL.